Hi, so before we start this video I want to apologise for the noise. There is construction work going on outside, my mother has the radio on and my dad is cutting the grass. So if you hear any noises, it is because of that. I have tried to minimalise the noise as much. Now someone is singing outside, that's fun. Okay, so I've tried to minimalise the noise as much as possible and I will start this video. For content warnings and the written version of this chapter, please check the description below. This chapter is the 7th chapter of the first serving of a doughnut from Cakeopia and is titled Good Things Come in Pairs. Remember that you can check out my Cash App, you can also donate to my GoFundMe to help with my transition journey, and my commissions are still open and you will be able to find the link to how to commission me in the description down below. Now without further ado, let's get into the chapter. Not a word was spoken on the long way back to the cafe. The journey took double the time, 30 minutes of agonisingly slow movement. So slow, the afternoon was already giving into evening. The dark shadows of the night fell upon the sullen duo, shrouding them in the darkness they felt on the inside. They had lost Granny Eccles, a loss which would stay with them for the rest of their lives. If you had asked SJ or Beedee a month earlier whether or not their lives would one day end, they would have naturally said no. Life was made to be immortal. Any other way was simply unnatural. SJ took a deep breath as he pushed the cafe door open, which was already open a crack, fully open. Inside, a mess lay before them. Tables were turned on their heads, chairs lay strewn across the floor, and 7 people stood or sat apart from each other looking down, averting their eyes, hiding behind their collective despair. SJ looked around the room, and he recognised at least 4 people from earlier. The 2 pies, Pecan and Pumpkin, were huddled in a corner. Pumpkin had his arm over Pecan's shoulder, holding him to his chest. Then there were the tarts, but only 2 were there, sitting close but looking away from one another, almost as though one of them dared to look at the other they would crumble to dust. The other faces SJ didn't properly recognise, but held a vague recollection of their earlier presence. It was likely they had been sitting behind others who were no longer there. Coffee Cake was the one who walked over to greet the pair. She could see pain in SJ's darkened red eyes, a pain she also displayed in her own. 6 people, she whispered, almost afraid to continue. 6 people gone, just like that, you know? Birthday? She looked over at Beedee, who, unlike her energetic, extroverted self, now hid in a doorway. When you said your sisters could be dangerous? A sob could be heard coming from one of the tarts. SJ dared not look over to see which one it had come from. I never believed you meant this dangerous. Coffee closed her eyes, fighting back her tears. 6 customers are gone, she recounted. 6. SJ inhaled the number as if it fell into the pit of his stomach. It was his fault 6 people were gone. Wait, was it 6? Or was it 8 if you included carrot cake and Granny Eccles? 9 if you counted meringue. But at this point, SJ was unaware of her expiration. The man had no idea what to do with himself. He looked over at Beedee, who just quietly found a chair and sat on it, taking in the gravity of the situation, allowing the weight to sit upon her. The only reason I'm still here, Coffee turned her attention to SJ, is because I hid behind the counter like the coward I am. He wasn't sure how to comfort the grieving woman. He thought about maybe placing a hand on her shoulder, but what use would that do? It wouldn't bring back the expired. He decided instead to go around the room and ask everyone if they were okay. Well, not okay. The answer to that was obvious. More to ease his conscience. The first person SJ sat with was an interesting character. Her body was made of a substance he couldn't quite put his finger on, but it was brown and crumbly. Pieces fell off her body like a cliff, crumbling away into the ocean. Her white creamy hair mixed with a purple-looking jam hid itself under a bright blue hat, decorated with a large feather, which looked like cream that had been piped on. She wore a tight corseted dress. It was clear it was tight as the poor woman looked blue in the face. "What's your name?" SJ asked quietly, approaching her. "Blueberry Delight." she replied, not looking over at him. It was clear this woman didn't want to talk about the ordeal she had gone through, and SJ was not one to pressure someone into talking, so he moved on to the tarts. Apricot jam and her brother blackcurrant jam tart lifted their sticky jam-filled faces to look at SJ as he approached. The pair wore clothes similar in style to SJ's. They were Tudor in appearance. Blackcurrant wore almost the exact same outfit except for the colour of the breeches, which were a deep purple instead of SJ's bright red. Apricot wore a loose orange gown with an upturned collar which pushed against the pastry that surrounded her jammy face. It was an unsettling sight seeing the two pairs of eyes poking out through their respective jam. SJ imagined it would be how his own face would look if the donut part had been torn off. It was a grotesque sight, to say the least, but still he stomached it for the sake of politeness. "They made me choose, you know," Blackcurrant sighed, looking directly at SJ, who felt uncomfortable in his proximity. "They made you choose what?" he asked Blackcurrant, who appeared to be fighting back a tear. SJ wondered how that would work. Would the tear get stuck in the jam? Blackcurrant looked over at his sister Apricot, who refused to meet his gaze. "They made me choose which sister they wanted me to have expired." The word stabbed SJ in the chest. If he had a heart instead of just jam, it would surely be racing. How could somebody force someone into a position to choose someone to expire? Though he didn't understand the feeling of family, he could sympathise with Blackcurrant and Apricot's guilt, for Apricot was no doubt suffering from survivor's guilt. "And you chose..." He didn't complete his line. It was too insensitive. He kicked himself for it. "No," Blackcurrant replied in a monotone voice. "I couldn't choose between my sisters, so they grew tired and picked at random." SJ bowed his head in shame. Why were they punishing innocent people for his refusal to stay put? Victoria was a goddess to these people, an image of love and hope, of what the world should be, but now her image was crumbling. SJ knew he should have trusted apple pie when he said the queen cake was bad news, but no, he had to see for himself, and what did that bring him? Nothing but pain and suffering to people just going about their lives. "I'm really sorry," SJ quivered, looking from one tart to the other. Apricot lifted her head in a gesture of thanks. She was quick to bow it down again, and when Blackcurrant did the same, SJ knew it was time to move on. The next people SJ approached were Pecan and Pumpkin Pie. Pumpkin still held his arm around Pecan, who buried himself on his love's shoulder, clutching his ruffled sleeve with a trembling pastry hand. Looking at the pair of pies, it made SJ wonder why two people so close were spared, but Blackcurrant had been forced to choose between two people. Was there any order to how Blondie and Brownie acted, or was it purely random? As if reading his mind, Pumpkin piped up, saying, "They said all good things come in pairs." Then they moved on to the tartlets. This made sense. Blondie and Brownie were after all a pair. Of course they would favour pairs like themselves. "Are you brothers?" SJ asked, intrigued by the dynamic for him. Pecan gave a slight chortle from within Pumpkin's shoulder. "No," he claimed, lifting his head to face SJ, who tilted out his head out of curiosity. "We're married." Pecan showed a small gold ring hugging his left ring finger. "Married?" was SJ's reply. "What does that mean?" Pecan looked confused and looked up to Pumpkin, hoping he would have a good answer. "Well," Pumpkin began, "it means we're in love." With that, he kissed Pecan on his forehead, right where a Pecan poked out from his pastry skin. SJ was more confused, and without thinking, blurted out, "Love?" This caused Pumpkin to prepare himself ready to stand. Pecan moved aside, giving his husband some space. "You think because we're two men, we can't be in love?" In honesty, SJ hadn't even considered the fact that the pair were both men. Upon seeing the tension between Beedee, headed over and placed a hand on SJ's shoulder in protection. "I don't think that's what he meant." She backed her friend up. "You see, SJ in many ways is still new to this world. He doesn't even fully understand the concept of family. So as you can imagine, love is, well, a big jump." Pumpkin relaxed and pulled Pecan in closer to him. SJ nodded in support of Beedee's response. "Yes, what is love?" Now everyone in the cafe looked around nervously. "Well, love is a feeling," Beedee began. "How do you know when you feel it?" SJ replied quickly. Beedee was right in many ways. SJ was new to this world. He saw it through a child's eyes. You just know. Pecan smiled warmly, facing Pumpkin. SJ let that sit for a moment. You just know. The words sat on his tongue, and he felt around his mouth, trying to make them stick. The more he considered the prospect of love, the less he felt a connection to it. I don't think I'll ever be in love, he claimed calmly. Beedee spun her friend towards her and looked him directly in the eyes. Don't say that, she chimed. Of course you will find love. Everyone deserves to find someone. The pies nodded in unified agreement, but SJ just shook his head. No, I mean, I don't feel like the word sticks with me. It's almost as if I'm aware of its presence, but I just don't feel it's there. Beedee warmed in appearance. She was giving a little "ah" inside her head. It caused her candle flame to glow warmer. That's okay too, SJ. If you don't feel it, you don't have to. Beedee smiled, looking around when her eyes caught sight of the last surviving customer. The girl made no waste in time by running over to him. Cinnamon Roll. Cinnamon Roll recounted his name for the third time. Cinnamon Roll? Beedee tried to pronounce it properly. No, Cinnamon Roll said firmly, but relaxed, proving it didn't bother him to correct Beedee. Instead, he sort of enjoyed correcting her. Cinnamon Roll. He tried sounding it out to her. Cinnamon Roll, Beedee offered awkwardly. You know what? Just call me Cinna. Cinna grabbed Beedee's hand in his. Sticky icing which covered Cinna's entire body was shared in a moment, but Beedee didn't mind. She didn't mind one bit. She was lost in Cinna's deep brown eyes. Oh, so this is love, SJ claimed, almost out of nowhere, making both Beedee and Cinna blush. It's a little early to be saying love, Beedee pushed, trying to desaturate the situation. It was clear SJ didn't understand, but he let it slide. Cinna looked smart but different to most of the people SJ had encountered. He wore a simple white buttoned-up shirt tucked into his tight jeans with a large collar. With a suit jacket on, Beedee thought Cinna looked dashing. SJ didn't really think anything of him, or anyone for that matter. Cinna was made entirely of a cinnamon roll, and he smelled delicious. Whenever he moved, he left a cinnamon-scented mark. This was something SJ couldn't deny was great. In reality, almost everyone in Cakeopia smelled good if you got up close. Even Victoria, but SJ couldn't and would never admit that. The smell of cake and cinnamon infused together as Beedee stood close to Cinna. Their combined scent was almost intoxicating, like a birthday party in your nose. I like your outfit, Beedee giggled, seemingly forgetting the entire situation they had found themselves in. Thank you, Cinna smiled. I used to wear Edwardian, but now I wear 90s. Anything Cinna said was music to Beedee's ears. He could say anything and she would eat it up. Did you lose anyone? SJ ended the calm moment. Cinna looked over in surprise. No, he whispered. Why did he keep saying the wrong thing? SJ palmed himself. I'm sorry, I've never been in a situation like this before. Coffee Cake headed over slowly. None of us have. She spoke with a somber tone. And we never will again. Everyone in the room looked over to Cece in surprise. What do you mean? Beedee asked her friend. I mean, Victoria will not get away with this. I know someone on the inside of the mansion who can help. She comes here every week and indulges herself with so much coffee it infuses her skin. Beedee nodded. Tiramisu. She knew exactly who Cece was speaking of. After all, she did live in mansion. Yes, Tiramisu. She's more of an acquaintance, but if we can get her on our side, we can win. Blackcurrant stood and walked over to the small quartet. What are you saying? He asked skeptically. Like they said, all good things come in pairs. The words stung Blackcurrant and drew the attention of Pecan and Pumpkin, who also stood and headed over. Blueberry Delight and Apricot Jam Tart stayed in place, feeling sorry for themselves. But better things come in groups. Now everyone understood. You want to start a rebellion? Blackcurrant asked, ingesting the idea. No. The rebellion started the moment SJ said he wanted to leave. SJ felt nervous. He knew it was his fault. It had all started, and even if no one admitted it, they knew it as well. But to be called out like this, he felt on trial. You're right, Pumpkin piped up. And I'm so glad he did. If he hadn't, we would have continued living under Victoria's thumb completely unaware. The group nodded in agreement. Even SJ could accept that. and now Apricot and Blueberry Delight stood. Looking around the room, Cece smiled. Then it's decided, she began. The rebellion starts here. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Remember, you can subscribe to this channel to see more videos like this. And I will hopefully see you in the next video, which will be on Thursday. It will be the A Spectrum Under the Queer Umbrella video. And then on on Saturday, we will be releasing my ranking of the 10 classic retellings, and next Tuesday will be the next chapter of the Dawn of Cakeopia. Thank you so much for subscribing, for supporting this channel, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye.